Liz, you've wasted 25 minutes of this work.
No, I haven't. I'm under my 12 minutes. John, take it up to Jen.
All right, we're back on record. And to move to discussion action items. Our first one is a very nice one that the board is very, very excited about, which is the announcement that the board has hired a new town administrator. We are extremely happy about this, and we are getting a wonderful, wonderful woman named Andrea Hansen. She's coming to us from Candia, where she is the current town administrator there and looking for a change and a new challenge. She has been a town administrator for many years. Candia operates a little bit differently than we do in terms of how they do some of like their finances and things like that. So I think it's going to be really interesting to have a new set of eyes come in and give us some advice on how to move forward. She will be starting 2 weeks from yesterday, so the 20th. The 20th is a holiday. So she will likely be coming in, getting situated, and maybe talking with Jillian a little bit and kind of getting our feet wet here. So we are extremely, extremely excited about that. And I hope everyone in town will welcome her enthusiastically when she starts on the 20th. I also want to thank Jillian, Daphne, and Lieutenant Doty, who took part in the interview process and did lunch interviews with our 2 final candidates, and their input was very much appreciated and helped us make our final decision. So that is our announcement, Andrea Hansen, and she will start 2 weeks from yesterday, and we are extremely, extremely happy about that. That's probably an understatement.
You're playing it kind of.
I'm playing it
You're kind of downplaying.
close to the vest. I'm keeping it cool. I could cry with happiness, let's be honest. So that's our good announcement. We already did our second action item, which was promoting Ambrose to town treasurer, so that is done. The next thing that we have on here is encumbrance requests. So as everybody knows, encumbrance is the process of if there is some unspent money in this year's budget, the ability to pledge that money to a definite cost in 2025. And every year we have some of these, some are small, some are bigger. And so I have 3 that I know of in front of me. I think there's some others that are floating out there that we will hear about probably next week and maybe the week after. But we are going to start with the ones that I know of. And the first 2 are library. I don't know if you want to come up and just quickly describe them. There's 2. And then wherever you, yeah.
There's actually 3.
Oh, there's 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
I sent one this morning. I'm sorry. I didn't realize we were doing this tonight.
And if you're not ready for the 3rd one, you can do it.
Oh, I am.
Okay.
And I sent it to you with all the paperwork.
I got the $420 one. I got the $4,000 one. There's another one? That's only 2.
And then the trimmers. I guess that's not.
Those aren't encumbrances. That's
just a move. Okay.
you're all set. That's ARPA.
Okay. So then it's 2. So the larger one is a request for $4,000 out of our compensation budget to be used in 2025. We have an employee who was out on short-term disability from September through December, and we have money remaining as a result of that. That person is back as of yesterday, but doing 50% time in the library and 50% time at home as approved by the trustees. And as a result, that leaves us with about 20 hours of unmet in-library coverage. So this encumbrance equals 40 hours at this person's current rate of pay for now through March when the new budget comes through. And that totals $4,030 But 4,000 is what we're asking for. So that's the
And
first
is this, did you factor in like FICA, Medicare, or is this just straight salary?
one. No, I didn't.
That's, I can do the math right now, because this is a part-time employee.
Yeah.
So they don't qualify for retirement
No.
or anything else, so
Right.
I think it's, isn't it 7.65? Is that right?
think
Okay, so I
that's
can
right.
do that for you while you're talking.
Okay, thank you. So do we want to discuss that one before I go on to the next one, or?
So that would be an extra $306 for
Okay.
those, so it'd be 4,306, and at least it's left in your.
Yeah.
You have more than enough to at 4,306.
Do you want separate motions?
Which,
And again,
are you looking at this one or a different one?
I'm looking at the one from the 6th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because this one,
Yeah, that's the other one for later. Yep.
And the reason we had that much of an overage, again, is because we were working with part-time people replacing a full-time person who is receiving short-term disability payments. So we wouldn't normally have that much left in our budget.
Right.
but
Yeah, because it was being paid by the
I just
insurance
don't want
company.
anybody to think that we budgeted incorrectly or, not frugally, because we did, but
Yep.
we didn't know this was going to happen. So do you want to?
Do you want
discuss
separate
this?
motions?
Yeah, why don't we do them separately?
Motion for
4306.
4306.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussions or questions for Janice? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. So that passes.
Thank you
We'll
very
move on
much.
to the next one.
And the other one is, we have a need, our library office does not have circulation. Being exhausted by the end of the day because of lack of air. So our trustees had us go out to a couple different people. We got quotes, and we found Flannel Electric is willing to put in a circulating through wall fan, which includes the fan, an outlet, because we don't have that many outlets, and the labor for $420. So we were hoping to encumber that from our operations line. I do have an estimate. That is what he's charging us. So it's money. We have already entered into contract with him. We're just waiting for the parts. He hasn't been able to get them.
Moved.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second for $420. They do have 1,367 in that line, so there's enough. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so that will pass.
All right.
All right,
Excellent. Thank you very much.
All right, the other one that I have, Becky, if you want to come up for that one.
we're gonna summon you from,
Yeah, we finished our meeting.
oh, well, there you go.
in the prompt. So I didn't realize that you might be doing some of these next week, so what I estimate, I don't have the final budget figure to see when the.
Do you want to
I
wait
would
and come
rather
back?
wait till
That's
next
fine.
week if
Yeah.
that's fine, because by then I'll have.
Yep, we just
time
put it
to
on
be with
tonight because we
Jillian.
knew we had a couple that had been floating around.
Okay, that would be great.
Yep,
Thank you.
Perfect, so we will just
Okay.
pause on that.
Thank you.
Great. And there's a few more, the ones I know of already. Bob Stevens just mentioned that there might be one. And then we have the fire. We're likely going to encumber the second half of the PFAS-free gear, which is in the realm of 24,000. I just need to get that actual invoice in front of me, so those will be coming in the future. If there's any other town employees, we will send out a reminder that they need to get those to us ASAP, hopefully by the next 1 to 2 meetings, so we can get that all cleaned up as we move
You should
forward.
just pick a date, say.
We can, yeah, let's see how many come next week and if there's any stragglers. Okay, so we'll pause the conservation. Okay. Next item of business is warrant articles. So this is something that's been a little bit challenging to do without a town administrator because they usually help us wordsmith the articles and run them by, we think it's DRA that sort of approves that they're legal and not violating any laws, which we don't want to do. So I think what we're going to do tonight is just discuss the couple that we know of already and have the board give kind of general assent to those, then get them written up officially and probably do an official vote once they're written up with all the appropriate language that will go on the official warrant. I think, does that sound reasonable to everybody? It's sort of a little bit atypical, but we're working with what we have here. And so the first one that we have is solar. This is a pretty straightforward warrant. I don't know, Rob, if you want to come up and speak to it or if you want me to just summarize it. Yeah, pretty straightforward warrant. So last year at town meeting, the town voters voted to open a solar maintenance account that we would use to pay the maintenance bills on the solar array, with the idea that the money that would go into that would be from the RECs that we sold off of that. And so what the request is now is there was an existing solar account that we had set up for the purchase of the array. It has a little bit of extra money in it. And so the idea would be to go to the voters to ask them to close that capital reserve fund that's no longer needed and transfer whatever funds are in there, which I think is like maybe a few thousand, we think. It's relative. We just actually sent a message to the trustees today to try to get exact up-to-date numbers. So we would have to have that number, that we would move all remaining funds into the new fund that's already been created, just to put those few $1,000s to work for solar. Did I state that correctly? Okay, so it should be pretty straightforward. It's just closing one account, moving those funds into the other account, which has already been created. And I don't know if any of the rec money, we don't have that yet, or if you want to speak to that. Okay. Where we've gotten that revenue yet. So when we get that additional rec revenue, that will go into that fund as well. So any questions on that from the board, and is the board in general assent?
Not to be
move
confused
forward?
with recreation money.
Right, yes, yes. What does it stand for? Renewable Energy Credit, REC. Yeah. They can buy them from you.
You just repeat that?
Yeah. Correct. Yep, so it's just to clean up the reserve fund. Rec credits are renewable energy credits that you can sell to organizations and entities that want to have a greener profile. And so that is money that would come in that would help support the regular maintenance of our array. So yes. No, because we have two current capital reserves. One needs to be closed, the other one's already been opened.
There's no point in having two.
So we are going to close that one, move the funds into the one that was opened last year by the voters. Any board member questions, thoughts, or opposition to that? Okay, so we'll get the exact wording
That one
worked out.
Does or does not have to go to budget committee?
Does not.
It's money, but it's moving money. It's not raising and appropriating, so probably not.
I don't think
We
so.
can double check, but probably not, because it's not raising and appropriating any tax dollars.
Mhm.
The next one is for rec, and this is the one that we talked about when we approved the rec budget. So Andy has been crafting the language of this warrant, which would be to raise and appropriate the funds to hire a rec assistant. And it has, Liz? Recreation, yes. So this would be to hire an assistant for Andy Gray at Recreation, and it would have the appropriations on it for the salary for that person. So that would go before BudCom because it would be a raise and appropriate. So this is what this board had previously talked about when we approved his budget. Are there any questions or concerns about that?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. And then the last one is winter maintenance. As this board had discussed previously, there is an existing winter maintenance ETF that had been created several years before I was on the board, several years back, I think at Andy's request, which was meant to serve as sort of a winter buffer if we had an unusually bad winter and we were looking like we were going to run out of money for plow drivers or sand or salt or winter necessities. And the idea is that if we could fund that fund a little bit more, it would allow us to tighten our budget in those areas because those tend to be areas of the budget that are underspent when we have milder winters. And so that fund currently has somewhere $10,000, $12,000 in it. So I would like to discuss with this board before we actually craft the language of this warrant, what kind of numbers we might like to see in that fund. As everybody remembers, we discussed with Wayne that because his budget is underspent this year, we would work with him to encumber the rest of his salt budget. He in exchange for that was willing to drastically cut his salt budget for next year, which we will talk about in a few minutes. And so this would be an additional buffer. And so I'm curious about what people think
So
for that.
just based
warrant.
on what that line historically has been for him, I think the goal amount in there for me would be like 150,000. And if we don't need to take out of it, then we don't put more in. And if we do take out of it, we just replenish it for this first year. I don't know, 25.
I think it depends like how you think of that being used. So it's like how you're going to balance it between budget and fund. Like,
I
are
would use
we
the budget first?
right?
At least that's
So then that might be more than we need, honestly, because if you look back, right, what do we say? It's about 80,000 a year we've spent max on sand and salt. Usually sometimes it's
haven't had that
50,
bad
sometimes
winter
it's
yet.
8. Yeah, we haven't. Right. So I think it's a little bit, I think it's up in the air what we need that fund to be, honestly.
Can we, you and I had talked about this, I don't know if Andy knows, can we, add to this from the unencumbered fund? Like, that's what we do at the school every year.
You can. Yeah, you can. Or you can raise and appropriate it at town meeting.
Yes.
Either way. It's public
was
dollars either way.
It was meant to be done from the unexpended funds.
When you first created it, that was your
Yes.
thought? Okay, to allow you to preserve unspent weather
Right.
funds. Yeah, okay.
Is it allowable for us to put something like that into a CD for 6 months of the year?
That's an Ambrose question.
Actually, I think that's the trust funds question. Right, because it's a trust fund?
Yeah, because
Yes.
it's a seasonal fund, right, that you only need during a certain part of the year.
Which I think
It
they
might be.
do invest somehow because the funds started with 10 and has 12.
Yeah, it grows,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So they are investing it somehow. some
Yeah,
way.
there's interest. So that we can figure out separately. So to your point, if we use unspent funds, then there'll be we don't have to raise and appropriate that out of next year's taxes. It will just reduce the ability to pay down the tax rate in the fall. So it's
But we
taxpayer
also won't
money
ask for it.
either way.
I personally would not like to add anything this year because we are encumbering the salt money already.
We already have kind of a buffer.
So, like, let's give the money back to use to offset the budget that we're looking at.
And Wayne felt pretty comfortable when I talked to him earlier that if we're encumbering the rest of his salt budget and giving him, I think we're 45,000 next year, that he felt pretty comfortable with that. You could also
If there's a
hedge
really
and
bad storm,
put,
we will find the money for him to sand and salt the roads.
yeah. So maybe we can check what's actually in that. I think it's around 12, but we'll check and see what's actually in that. I think it wouldn't be unreasonable if this board wanted to put a small amount in, 10,000, 15,000, but at the same time, if we'd rather
I think
just
it would be
leave it,
good
we
if we
could.
said out loud what our goal is. So again, my only comparison is the school board. And we have those 3 funds that we fill every year out of unreserved fund balance. And we said out loud, like, we want this fund to have this many dollars. And
Yeah.
we got to there, stopped filling it.
I think it's so hard to guess given the kind of strange winters that we've been having
Well, we can
the past couple of years.
average a 5-year budget on snow and ice control and what
Yeah.
we actually use,
Well, but
Yeah.
and that can be your baseline, and then
I thought this was more, my understanding was that we were doing this so that we don't have to budget for the worst winter ever every
Right.
year.
correct.
Yes.
So shouldn't we
can
make
cut
sure
our
that we
budget
have
down.
the money for the worst winter ever?
But we need to find out what the baseline is before we find out what the worst is, if you know what I mean.
Whatever.
So-
he- whatever
so
he
every
wants for
year-
salt.
Every year, his worst is 181,000.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's how much sand and salt cost, right?
Right.
So
So what's the baseline?
Right, and then you take the baseline, and then the difference between the baseline and
That's true.
181,000 is what you want.
When we looked through past 5 years, it was what,
Average
50 to
about
80? Yeah, 50 to 80.
some years it was.
So you could argue maybe you need 100,000 in that fund or to your point, 120.
It's also going to depend on how much we end up putting in the budget.
But even that 180 worst case scenario, I don't know what that's based on. That's based on just somebody's gut feeling of what a worst case year would be. Like, that may not be an actual factually based figure.
I mean, could we at least start by saying 100,000 until we have more firm numbers and we?
I think that's high.
No.
think
This
that's
is a
okay.
supplement, isn't it?
It's meant to be a emergency weather slush fund, yeah. So I think, to Andy's point, given that we're trying to reduce spending this year,
Oh, no, I'm not
we
saying
may
put
not
in
need to
100.
fund it.
I'm saying.
Yeah, there's a goal and
we
then there's
should
what you put in.
say, here's what this capital reserve
Yeah.
fund is, here's how much is in it, here's what.
Yeah. If we don't want to fund it this year, though, we can just completely leave it off. We don't even have to, because the fund already exists. It's already got some money in it. So this board, I think Andy's preference was, let's just turf it, because we already have kind of a plan for this year to try to reduce the budget. And then just maybe stick a pin in this for the next couple of years as we see what the spending looks like, and maybe beef that fund up when we have a slightly better budgetary year. Would everybody be okay with that? Just kind of turf that one for now? Okay. Okay, so we'll just hold on that one for now. Okay, perfect. So we'll work on the wording of the solar and rec, and then we'll encourage other people to get their warrants in. The deadline for warrants and citizen petition warrants is February 4th at 4 p.m. So anybody out there who's thinking of doing a warrant, you've got about less than a month to get those in. So please get them to us as soon as you can. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go through potential budget reductions. And so this will be a little bit of a process, but we're going to try to make it as quick and painless as possible. So just so that the public understands the intentionality here. When we started the budget process over in the early fall, when our town administrator was still here, we got a preliminary budget which showed about a 12 or 13% increase, and that was without the trash contract, without health insurance, without liability insurance. What else did we not have then? Some other little contractual things.
Yeah, those things that we don't.
So we knew it would go up from 12, and all of us were feeling pretty worried about that. So as we were doing budgets, we were trying to trim where we could, and we're hoping our number was going to come in quite a bit lower. And then we got a few surprises, namely the trash recycling went up a lot more than anticipated. And so we are currently left with a budget in front of us that is a 12.1% or 12.08, I think, to be precise, but a 12.1% increase. This board does not feel comfortable bringing that kind of increase to the public and would love to get that down to single digits. So what we have done is we've looked through the budget line by line by line to try to find the line items that look to have been underspent last year or historically underspent. I think sometimes what happens is somebody brings a level funded budget to us and we say, great, level funding sounds great. And we just leave things be. Whereas this year, we're actually going to go into some of those level funded budgets and find some places that we can trim. So what you guys have in front of you is a printout from December. It doesn't really matter when it was. We basically just used it because it has the budget numbers on it. And so what you'll see as we go through the budgets is you'll see the current next year requested. Next to it in red is Letty and I kind of our suggested cut. And some of these have been already reviewed with department heads, and we'll let you know that. And then in the very right side, you'll see what the decrease is. And I've gone through and given updated total budgets.
All department heads were notified.
They were all notified, and we've heard back from some of them with some small modifications that we'll go over. So I think what might be easiest, and I don't know if this makes sense to you guys, is to just reopen the entire budget and then just go through section by section by section by section. If the board members are generally in favor of what's on here, we can vote and approve it and move on. If we want to make changes, we'll make those changes, vote on those, and move on. There are a few budgets that are not impacted here. So if you don't want to reopen the whole budget, we could just go through and open them one by one. I don't know if anybody feels strongly about that process. You comfortable just reopening the whole budget? If so, I'll take a motion to reopen the entire budget.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we will reopen the whole budget. And we will start with executive office. We're just going to start at the top and go down. So what you will see here is 3 suggested cuts. Pre-employment physicals dropping from 2,000 to 1,000. Recruitment expenses dropping from 750 to 500. And advertising notices dropping from 900 to 250. And this is based on current year spending. That would be a total budgetary decrease of $1,900.
So my,
Oh, that was fast. Go ahead, Andy. Andy?
My only concern with that is the pre-employment physicals.
Yes.
Fire department says each of theirs is about $1,000, and we're looking to hire 3 firefighters.
Each of
Does
theirs-
that come out of
Hold on,
firefighter?
if each
No.
of theirs is $1,000, why?
Because we haven't hired any firefighters.
Yeah, we.
Do
Did
they?
we
Not
hire-
full-time.
Does that come out of this and they don't have a line
I-
item?
They don't have a line in their budget,
Okay.
so
So we might need to change that one. This is
don't-
why we just
I
want
don't
to,
think we need to change that one. I think there are enough other lines that don't get used that will be okay.
we could, I mean, the other thing to remember is that, and Letty and I went back and forth on this, we have a $20,000 buffer in general government, and Letty wanted to cut it, and I said, let's leave it, because if we accidentally overcut something, we still have a small buffer. And, you know, this is going to be a tighter budget, so we may have some lines that are tighter or go over, and we will have a little bit of wiggle room in that particular budget. So I hear your point, and I think we could go either way. It's the majority, however the majority of the board feels comfortable.
You could decrease the first line by 3,200.
No, that's actually your buffer.
We could do that if you want. Yep, that's another option. Yep. Yeah, I mean, all of these, there's a lot of places you could cut here, so we just tried to find like the most obvious
We're
ones.
saying is we went back and forth a lot. We have to pick lines to apply these to, but really it's a reduction of the bottom line budget.
Right,
So you can feel that it's coming from the top line if that feels better. But it's all,
right. It's all the
Budget,
same, yeah. The executive office budget of $25,000 is going
Going
to
to be
cover all of these
reduced.
costs.
yeah.
So would people like to change that in pre-employment physicals, or leave it, or put that back up and take some out of the first line? I am perfectly happy to do whatever folks want to do. I would just put a plug to Letty's point. I don't think we want to get in the weeds and like really, really, really overthink some of these, because to Letty's point, there's often wiggle room in some other lines. If we overcut one line, we know there's some other lines that might absorb it.
Okay, so let's cut 1,000 from the first line, leave the pre-employment alone, and we're at the same place.
Sure.
I think that's.
Sure. Okay, move the 1,000 up to the top
Can
line,
I just ask why?
because it makes someone happy.
Okay. No,
Because it doesn't matter, right?
well,
Yeah,
So-
this is just what we're gonna bring
this
to
is
BudCon.
one of
Yeah,
50.
Well,
Okay.
Yeah.
if, I think Paul is saying he's not gonna take his salary, correct? Is that what you're saying?
I was just merely saying that we should.
so let's
Right.
do it.
So, I mean, we might as well cut that money out if that's money available.
Oh, I would cut it more than that then if we're really, like, if we're
Yeah.
doing that, I would do it all the way.
No, let's just do 3,200 on that line and leave the pre-employment physicals where it was. Does that sound good?
Yeah, I was just, I mean, $1,000 on our budget isn't a huge factor. I'm just
Right.
trying,
It's just-
trying
That's
to.
not true.
It's just
I-
additive.
Listen,
We have a lot of lines.
we can't think that way because that list that you have in front of you has a lot of $500, $1,000 cuts that equal $200,000 when you add
No,
them
I think
Yeah,
you misunderstand what I'm saying. $1,000 that we have to find if we need it isn't a lot of money on
Right.
this budget.
Correct.
I'm not saying $1,000 doesn't matter. I'm saying the percentage of what we would have to find isn't crazy.
But
I just wanted to bring up the fact that that's what an expense would
Yep.
cost. the
Guys,
town.
it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Correct.
We're getting to the same number.
no,
Let's just-
no, because I'm saying if you're not going to take we can cut that top line by 3,200.
Yep, which
Like
is
there's
what we're gonna do.
$8,000 left in that budget this year that didn't get used. You need some for employment physicals, sure, but
Yeah.
we could take more.
Letty, I'm not saying I needed it. I wanted to bring it to the board that that's an expense that we may have. That's all.
Yep.
Hear you.
So Letty, what I'm hearing is a suggestion to drop the first line by 3,200, leave the employment physicals where it is, keep the 250, keep the 650, so that would be a reduction of $4,100. That would drop the total budget to 5,005 minus 4,100 down to 20,905.
That's what.
Does that sound right?
Mhm.
Okay, do we have a motion for that?
Moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Paul?
Second, agree.
Okay, agreed. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We just saved $4,000 on the budget. Okay. Next one is town administrator. So as discussed earlier, we have hired a new town administrator. Her salary is going to be $100,000. That is a savings of about $11,000 compared to the budget. So as you see in this line, there is a reduction in the salary line and subsequent reductions in FICA, Medicare, and retirement. That would allow us to reduce this budget by $13,124 for a new total of $121,942. Questions or discussions about that?
Moved.
191,942.
121,942.
We're also gonna post this.
Can we just,
Yeah, Liz, you can
the
get
work.
these numbers later. You can get these numbers later, Liz. We have to go through 19 pages of budgets, so we just can't answer questions. That's not my fault. It's not your fault at all, but we're gonna make our way through it. Okay, thanks, Liz. So I have in front of us a motion. Thank you, John.
121,942.
Other second?
Second.
We got a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of 121,942 for town administrator?
Aye.
Okay, we're good. So we've already cut 17,000. Okay. Next is town clerk, election, tax collector. They're kind of all together because they're all under Daphne. The suggestions that Letty had made initially, Daphne asked for some adjustments. So the ones that you see on here in red are the ones that Daphne has approved. So if we start with the town clerk budget, she agreed to decrease her supplies a little bit just by $200. That would change her budget to $93,839.
Moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm an aye.
I want to reduce the dog licenses budget by $1.
Oh, Jonathan, hold your tongue. Okay, next is the election budget. We discussed this. We had put a police detail in. That is something we had never previously budgeted for and had always made it work. And so we, Daphne suggested removing that from the budget or leaving it at $1, I think would probably make sense. So that would be a reduction of $14.99 in that 116 line. She also agreed to reduce her advertising down to $250 and her general supplies down to $500 for a total savings of $2,749, which would reduce her total budget to $100,591.
Moved.
Second.
Wait, no.
One,
Oh, you're adding those two together?
The
100.
negative
590.
$14.99, negative $750, negative
That's the
$500.
election budget, which is 9,300
Oh, sorry, my bad.
more. Okay.
What about the print, the software
So,
support?
you're right, I was doing the total number.
That's sum total.
So 9,301 minus 1499 minus 750 minus 500 is 6,552.
Sorry, we're on elections?
Yeah, I just accidentally subtracted it from the total. It should be actually the same, but we
20
should. So that, see the line that says 9,301? That's actually what's being modified to 6,552 with the three changes I just discussed.
Mm-mm.
That make sense? So removing the police detail down to $1 and doing those two other cuts for advertising.
Page 3.
Yeah,
See 9,301?
It's not in red above the, go down.
9301.
Yep, that would be 6,552.
6552. Okay, got it.
Does someone want to motion that?
Moved.
Paul made a comment about software support
Oh,
not
sorry.
being
Software support.
used.
Where do you?
We're getting a
Well-
new voting machine.
Okay.
So we
Yeah,
won't
not
move it.
sure. Yeah, I think Daphne didn't want to move that one, so she may have better
fair enough.
understanding what that is. Okay, so do I have a motion for the 6,552?
Yep.
Yes, so John, yes, second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, great. Next is tax collector. This had a similar small change, similar to the first one, where reduction of supplies by $200 for a new budget of 94938.
Moved.
Need the conventions?
Yep.
Yeah, we were gonna cut that. Daphne felt pretty strongly that she had to advocate for that to make sure that she and her deputy could both go to conferences, so she felt very protective of that, and we honored that.
And it's added training.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Moved.
So there's a
Throwing stuff?
motion.
Settle down.
So there's a motion for the 94938
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Oh, I'm away.
Okay, we're making progress. Assessing is unchanged. Next is information systems. Letty, I wonder if you can speak to this one. Was this just you kind of
Yep.
just spitballing that
Yep.
we
Because
think this is maybe a bill that hasn't been paid
we
or?
don't know.
Okay, we're not sure why
because-
this line was underspent, but we're
because
nervous to change it
Block
because it,
five,
it's
yeah,
important.
because, yeah.
it's possible that maybe these invoices were attributed to an
a
incorrect
different
line, or
place
we don't know.
or We don't know. It's-
Okay.
Yeah. mhm.
Yeah. So we
And that-
don't want to mess with that because that's block 5. That's our people who help us with all of our
Everything.
computers and cybersecurity and email and everything. So
But we have no outstanding invoices that we know of from Block 5.
How do you know that?
that we
that was a
know of.
question.
Yeah, that we know of. Yeah. So we felt comfortable. I think you wanted to shave just a little bit off of that, Letty, just for
Yeah,
for giggles. So Letty's suggestion had been to decrease that line by $617. That would drop that total budget to 84,225.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Paul's an aye, I'm an aye, so we'll make that change. Next is finance. So this one is a little bit different in that we just promoted Ambrose to be the full treasurer. If this board remembers, we had previously discussed that the 115 line in this budget, both accounts.
Sorry, what can,
Yep.
just
Yes.
1 second. So we went from, and I'm just not recalling, when we went from 24,665, sorry, I'm going to information systems budget on software. 24,665 from this,
This
past
past year.
year.
Yep.
then we approved 26,617.
That was a number provided by Karen. Yep.
That was the number provided by Karen,
Yes.
but we don't know, we didn't.
This is a little
anything else.
murky, our understanding of this line, so we didn't want to get ourselves in trouble.
Okay.
So
So we're basically leaving it.
it's possible that some departments have their block 5 invoices in those departments,
Mm.
but we have the IT contract, whatever, with block 5 that
Yeah.
we saw, so.
So we figured just leaving that for now was safer.
So worst case, it's
We should be okay.
$600.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, sorry.
So the
Finance.
finance, the differences here is the second line down is a hodgepodge of Jillian's salary and the extra money we were using to outsource some of our bookkeeping and reconciliation. That process was not as effective as we wanted it to be, and our auditors had recommended that we no longer do that outsourcing because it wasn't working for us the way we needed it to. So this board had previously had a discussion in non-public under sort of hiring and promotion about wanting to make some changes. And what we have preliminarily discussed and are bringing it to the public discussion now was to clean up that second line to be just Jillian as the clerk and to move the bulk of that money up to the treasurer to bring those tasks in-house. And Ambrose is willing to do that to give us some additional hours compared to what our old treasurer had been giving us. So essentially, if you look at it here, it's about $18,500 coming out of the second line and about 19,900 going into the top line because we had had an informal discussion with Ambrose about a $32,000 salary. So it essentially just moves that outsourcing money from the second line up to the top line. It does add FICA Medicare because we would now be paying an in-house employee to do it instead of a contractor. So that line goes up a little bit. So making those changes just increases this budget by $3,045, which I would voice my support for, but happy to
So
hear
that's mostly
any
just
thoughts.
the FICA Medicare.
It's mostly that small adjustment to the first line and then the FICA Medicare addition because of an additional employee having additional hours.
Mhm.
Questions, comments, or thoughts about that?
Yeah, I would just add that even though that's an increase, we're in my opinion, getting a much upgraded service with Ambrose.
Yeah.
I know from now interviewing with other town administrators that other towns have finance directors, which really, is something that we have been lacking. And I think that, this sort of brings us, on a road towards that.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
I think this is a justifiable.
Yeah, and we've also had pretty open conversations with Ambrose that this is a 1-year plan.
Right.
And then we're going to reassess. And it is possible that we could then cut back the hours and the responsibilities of that position. We do have a little bit of kind of catch up to do. And so this will be reassessed next year. But I think it's a great step forward for us. Agreed.
Yeah, I also appreciative, John, of you, making the connection with Ambrose.
Yep, absolutely. Great. So if the board's in favor of that, that would increase this budget slightly by $3,045 up to $125,790.
Moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so we'll do that. The next one is Budget Committee that has the whopping budget of $500. Letty had suggested dropping that to 100, but I guess I wanted to discuss, could we drop it to
So,
$1?
No, because I would really like it if anyone that joins any committee goes to the New Hampshire Municipal Association, like how to be on a committee, what minutes are.
Yeah,
Every year.
for
they
like
do
the
that.
secretary, yeah.
No, for any member of any board. And that's typically what that's been used for.
The
So-
professional training line?
Yes.
Okay.
So if we wanted to keep that 65 and drop the rest of it, that's fine. I think I just picked 100 because.
Yeah, I mean, Michelle's the current secretary, she waives her salary, so we can pretty,
I think we should leave- I
safely
mean,
put that at 0 or 1.
I don't like to leave it at 0, so I would put it at 1. Just in case.
So if you want to leave that at 1, and then the FICA Medicare 0, right?
I think we need to leave it at.
Should we leave 1?
Case.
Okay, so leave 1. If we pay $1, we have to pay 7 cents of Medicare. So we got to leave it in there.
We
So
don't-
if we leave those at $1 and we leave it at 65, that would be a total budget of $67.
Sure.
Further discussion on that?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
I
Okay. Next one is legal. And there was a suggestion to decrease the first line engineering and surveying down to 500. I don't know, Letty, if you have any background or insight on that line, but it was significantly underspent this year.
Yeah, it was significantly underspent this year. I can look up whether or not it was used in past years. I'm assuming it's in case the town needs to do any surveying.
Yep.
Um,
So the suggestion was to drop it to 500, which would be more than we spent this year. And as you said, we often can find a few $1,000s in the budget if we need to for an emergency. So that would decrease that line by $3,125 and would change this budget to 34,002.
Moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so we'll approve that. Insurance has no changes. Planning board, we will get to next. So planning board
Wait.
has some more
This number's
significant.
not correct.
Which one?
This is the higher number.
What higher number? I don't know what you're talking about.
624
The insurance one?
benefits one.
You don't think that that's correct?
I think that was the full amount of the payment, and then.
Has it not been updated?
I mean, when was this printed? 12/10? Maybe not.
Oh,
Like,
if
I
so,
think-
ignore.
I think we approved a lower number. As
I have,
Yes.
I have a 1.6 in front of me. If
But I don't think it has the budget. It's just
Oh.
expenditures. We may have changed it in BMSI after the date of this.
Okay.
So disregard.
Okay.
Yeah, I just used this one because this is the one that had my
That's
highlights
totally
on it and I had it in front of me. Okay, so yeah, disregard that. So planning board is next. There are multiple suggested decreases in here. Planning board does currently have quite a bit left in their budget this year. So the first one would, engineering and surveying, the recommendation was to drop from 800 to 100. Legal services was not spent at all this year. The recommendation was to drop that to $1. The circuit rider would drop to $1 because the plan is to have that go into a capital reserve
I'm gonna
fund.
change the name of that line to master plan, just so it's not.
The 399?
Yeah. just
Yeah,
so
because that's really what it is,
Yeah.
the master plan. And the printing, we decided to leave, right?
Yep, because they actually did print stuff.
Yep. And then advertising notices, the recommendation was to drop from $200 to $1. If we made all of those changes, that would be a decrease of $11,397 for a new budget of $114,707. And I know Mark had sent an email kind of reacting to some of these changes, but I didn't get the sense whether he was in opposition to any of the changes or
I
just
think
was providing some background.
I took that as just providing background so that we had a better understanding of what those lines were.
Okay.
Did the rest of the board see that actually, or did that just go to?
Might have just gone to the two of us.
Okay.
Questions, comments, or concerns about any of these changes? And they do currently have, I want to say, about $30,000 left in their budget. There is one, I think, outstanding invoice that's going to come in for Glenn, but we anticipate that budget having more than $25,000 left this year.
Moved.
So we have a motion for the 114,707, second by Andy. Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
I,
Okay, we're doing good, guys. We're on page 6. Okay. ZBA, we discussed dropping the legal service line from $998 to $1. That would drop their total budget from $1,401 to $404.
Moved.
second.
Questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Look at us, we're cutting machines. Okay, next is government buildings. So this is one of our budgets. There are multiple cuts in this budget. Some of these are probably historical from when some costs were higher, maybe during COVID. So the first one is the heating oil gas, which was budgeted at $5,000 but spent at $3,400. Recommendation was to drop that to $4,000. Recommendation was to drop. Wait, why do I have a 399 there? I was doing this late at night last night, so forgive me if there's something weird in that next line. Building improvements.
It looks like was already getting dropped to $1.
Did I do something weird here?
No,
Let's
'cause you
see.
can't change that.
Government bill. Well, see how I have a negative 3,999 there? Where am I getting that from? That might have been creative math on my part. So let me just look at Letty's one. Government buildings. Oh, wait, no. It's from
Oh, fire
you.
alarm.
Oh, because it was budgeted at 4,000 and we're dropping it to 1, which is negative 3,999.
Oh, it was just
I
on
was
the
just
wrong
looking-
line.
I was just looking at the, yeah.
I gotcha.
I just have creative handwriting. So we, I think, decided building improvements to leave that, right, Elodie? Yes.
Yes.
So some of the highlighted ones we didn't change here. So the first one was the heating,
Because we cut some of the other.
Yep,
lines.
going down 1,000. Then the fire alarm contract. Did you ever, we were going to sort of sleuth that. We could not find what that
So,
referred to,
and
right?
This might be a good time to. There are lines that we can't figure out why they're empty, but we also figure that everything got paid this year.
Right. So if there really was a $4,000 contract, it got paid.
And it just went in the wrong line, and if we overspend that line next year because we made a mistake, that's fine.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So that's why that cut was
No,
there.
we couldn't find it, is this short?
Yep. And then the next one was to cut the telephone contract from $5,270 down to $3,500, and custodial supplies down from $2,000 to $1,000. Continuing on the next page,
Why not the electric, which was 25, and then it was 21 this year, and next year requested 25?
I think I didn't highlight that one because
So
it was like
at one
a
point, we had
couple
talked about
thousand
pulling
different.
all of the electric, I think all utilities into their own budget.
We talked about that a few times, but have never done it.
So I'm
Yeah.
guessing that's.
We could certainly make an additional small cut there, Paul, if you wanted to. I think it, I probably just didn't highlight it initially because it didn't pop out at me.
Well, if we're on it, we might as well do it.
Well, we
We could cut it
should
2,000
make
out of
sure,
that.
we
or-
should make sure that all of the, we should,
I don't love this fire alarm contract thing. It's making me a little nervous.
why?
I don't know.
It made us a little nervous too, but at the same time,
It doesn't mean that the
if it
fire
was
alarm
paid-
contract isn't gonna get paid.
right.
Well, it is if there's no money left over.
hopefully that we're not trimming the budget that much. If we're trimming the budget that much, we're going to be in trouble. We have to go to the voters and beg them for more money. So I'm hoping that is not going to happen.
because we have so many capital reserve funds. We'll be all set.
I think to Letty's point, if that's even a real cost, right? So we don't even know. As far as we know, we have no outstanding bills from any fire alarm companies, so it was paid. So we already absorbed it in the budget somewhere if it went on the wrong line or it went into the wrong department or it got attributed to the fire department or who knows what, right? So I think that was Letty's thinking, if I'm explaining it correctly, Letty, that like, even if we cut it a little too vigorously today,
The bottom
we
line
had the
number
money
will
in
be
the
fine.
budget. Right. We had the money in the budget. So that's why I was in support of that one. But I hear you. So Paul, would you like to cut that electric to a smaller number?
23.
23? Okay. So that would take 2,000 additional out of that line. Okay. Then moving on to the next page, this is actually a section of the general government budget or the government building budget that was discussed at BudCom. And at the time, BudCom voted not to make changes because we didn't know the end number. But we are now going to go back and make some changes. So if you guys remember, we had fleshed out these lines over the past year or two and added some lines, that these maintenance lines were for like the little small maintenance projects as opposed to like the really big projects that would come out of the capital reserve fund. So we had inflated some of these a little bit in the past couple of years, and this is an attempt to pull them back a little bit. So fire station would go from 15,000 down to 8,000. Highway buildings would go from 5,000 down to 1,000. The rec center would go from 7,500 down to 2,500. And the BudCom had questioned the land maintenance line, but given that it was only at 1,000, I think we just thought that probably wasn't worth messing with. So this budget has some pretty significant cuts. If we also add Paul's cut, that would be a cut of 25,769. And so the total would be 82,302 if we're in support of these.
Just for reference, the total of all the Eversource bills currently is 22,080,085.
For which bills?
The electric bills.
Oh, okay. Anybody
I
have
think the 22.
significant concerns or worries? This is a fairly sizable cut. This is like a 20+% cut in this budget,
Yeah,
but we felt like we could probably do it.
I'm probably a no on this one.
Okay.
I think one of my concerns here is that we didn't have a town administrator for a little
Sure.
while, and I think that artificially alters some of the potential
They may have.
spend here, and I know there are continuing issues specifically with the rec and with the aging fire station. So
Yep.
those are some of my concerns.
Yeah, I hear you. Other thoughts on those numbers? Anyone interested in making a motion
Moved.
for the 82,302?
Yeah.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
I
All opposed?
Aye.
I'm opposed.
And I'm an aye, so that passes 4-1. Cemetery had one change of land maintenance. They had been budgeted for 2,000 but spent less than 900. So the suggestion was to drop 2,000 down to 1,000, which would drop their total budget from 14,740 to 13,740. Comments or thoughts on that?
moved.
Second.
More discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
and I'm an aye, so that will pass. Next is insurance. We had previously talked about the fact that the town doesn't really budget for unemployment, and we had left $1,000 in there, sort of just as a placeholder. The recommendation was to drop that to 1. We did previously increase our insurance deductible up because that mirrors what our actual Primex deductible is, so that had previously gone up. This other line would go down. This would decrease the budget by $999 to $162,616. The thought was that we usually just absorb unemployment
numbers-
in the salary lines.
Are these the right property, liability, and workers' comp number? Just because
They may not be.
Okay.
Oh, true.
I just
That's true, we did, well, I'll figure it out afterwards.
Sure.
If I have to bring it back, I will.
Okay.
But, did we change that after December 10th? I don't think so.
I don't.
Because this was kind of, the reason I picked this one, this was like our kind of final budget.
I
I don't know. You're right, these aren't the right numbers. So let's just approve the decrease,
Okay.
and I can fill in the correct number, because you're right, we did, this was, we had to wait on the Primex contracts.
Yep.
Which I probably have somewhere if you want me to
'Cause we
actually
couldn't
just pull them out.
Couldn't.
Because I did have to bring those to BudCon.
Can only pull them out if they're less, if they're more.
No,
than-
they're more,
Oh.
they're more.
Yeah, that's,
Don't pull 'em.
Because remember, the Primex contracts went up.
yeah, so I have in here that it was at 185, 112, which obviously you can subtract.
I'm gonna look at the one from the 24th, because that is probably updated by then. Yes, yeah, you're correct. So that first line is really 96,207. The second line is 84,903. And then the $1 suggested in the 5,000. So the total was 186,111, not this number, so I can correct that. Although it looks like, Letty, this one,
I don't know anymore.
you already have it decreased to $1. I think maybe you had already put it in when you printed.
Maybe.
So I think
So
this number would be correct.
186.
186,111 would be removing that 999 out. Any concerns about that? If not, I'll take a motion for the 186,111.
Moved.
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, I'm an aye, so we'll move on. We're on page 8. General government is next. So general government, we suggested a decrease in travel mileage from 2,500 to 1,000. We suggested a decrease in long-range planning from 43,110 to 40. That, I think, is mainly the line that pays for the consultant. I think it was just trimming that a bit with the idea that we do have some wiggle room in that budget. And going on to the next page, postage had been budgeted at 14,000 but spent less than 10,000. So we dropped that to 10. Office supplies, we dropped from 6,500 to 4,000. And that expenditure, we decided to leave ourselves a little bit of buffer if we are a little too vigorous in any of our cuts. If you accept those 4 changes, that would be a change of 12,110 for a new number of 110,826.
Do we know what was historically spent out of that?
Out of which?
Expenditure offset?
That's the old
complicated
tan.
because
Oh,
we
that's the-
don't
okay.
That's the
move
old
it.
tan. Yeah, generally we don't spend it because that's like our last ditch safety buffer.
But it's not really because it just sits there.
So is
Because
that,
you would apply whatever the expense was to the correct.
Yeah,
So again, I'll support this one because of that offset. But I am slightly concerned that we're looking at this with an artificial reduction that's based on the lack of a time.
What do you mean an
for which
artificial
line?
reduction?
Oh, you mean, you think postage or office supplies or things might have been higher if we, yeah, that's possible. Yep, I hear you. Yep.
so we're keeping the offset? Is that what you're saying?
I think we should keep the offset. We could certainly trim it. At one point, Letty had suggested dropping it to 10, which
No,
would
I think
allow
you're
us.
right, because we're,
It gives us just that littlest bit of buffer if we're like, oh, we did need that contract for $5,000 that we cut. It's not a big buffer compared to our, $6-7 million budget, but it just gives us that little buffer that I would personally feel more comfortable leaving in. But I would be amenable to a different thought if people have different thoughts on that.
I just feel like we have so many other buffers that I just don't.
we're actually cutting all of them.
We do have
We have-
potential buffers,
We
yeah.
have reserve funds and things of that nature.
Well, we can't spend, we can only spend what's budgeted for. So if we cut these things, we can't, unless we go, have an emergency town meeting. But yes, some of these lines, we left a buffer in them, right? We spent 3,000 this year, next year we left it at 4,000. We tried to leave a little safety buffer so we wouldn't get ourselves in trouble. would you like to suggest cutting that line, or can you live with that?
Well, I mean, I don't get the sense there's a consensus for doing so.
Okay.
I'll leave it be.
Okay. Are folks generally in favor of that 12,110 reduction there? If so, I'll take a motion for the 110,826.
Move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? No, I'm an aye, so that will pass. The next is Police Department. These changes were made specifically by Lieutenant Doty at our request, and we thank him for doing that. He cut the wages line because now that he has 9 police officers on staff, he feels that he will not need to use his part-timers as much. And so he felt comfortable trimming about 25,000 out of his wages line, which then trickled down to FICA, retirement. He also made a small decrease to training. And so the total decrease of those trims is 36,259, which drops his budget down to 1400987.
Moved.
Second.
Further questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I thank him for this because he actually made a deeper cut than we asked him to. So
Yeah, we
my hat's off to the lieutenant for doing that. Next is fire. These have been discussed and reviewed with Joe Bird and Katerina Tennant, and they made some small adjustments to what we had initially requested, but were very flexible, and I would like to really thank them for being flexible. These cuts made them nervous because we did previously agree to some increases to help them with staffing, and they're a little nervous about trimming, but once we kind of explained our intentionality to them, they were on board, and I appreciate them being on board. And we just lost Andy. So we can just peruse these numbers for a moment until Andy comes back. Essentially, it's some overtime cuts, training cuts, cuts on heating, oil, gas, dues and subscriptions, vehicle repairs, vehicle fuel oil, and equipment purchases. They were comfortable trimming out of all of those lines for a total reduction of 41,220. That would reduce their total budget to 1256541, which brings their increase down from almost a 29% increase down to less than a 25% increase. Still a significant increase because of the previous budget increases that we had authorized for staffing changes and wage adjustments.
Did we, remember the brush fire that
Yep.
was going? Does the overtime reflected here, do you happen to know if that is
It should.
in this?
Yeah, it would be.
I would think it should be, yeah, because that would have been paid out already.
Only for people that are hourly paid, though. If you're on salary, you don't get it.
Yeah, so that 42,000 plus of overtime that we paid should account for that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So we'll just wait for Andy to reappear.
Can I talk about something else? Or do you
Sure.
want to wait? I'm wondering if we should add a buffer in the code enforcement. I know we left it, but I'm wondering if we should goose it a little bit.
Code enforcement? Because of the change of personnel? We could, I mean, it already has like a, COLA merit
Oh, that's
adjustment in
true,
there.
that's true.
Similar to town administrator, I think we felt like it's hard to know, and
Mhm.
so we were comfortable leaving that one. Plus, we're trying to cut here, Laddie.
I know.
I know you know. I know you
Wanna
know.
where, I'm not going to tell you where we are because I feel like it's going to be more dramatic if I wait till.
Oh, yeah, wait till the end. You're putting it in as we go? Oh, you're so good. Where did Andy go?
Please come.
Ah.
Man, it's going to be more dramatic. If,
Well, I mean, your vote matters.
Fire.
Yeah.
You're the vice chair. I mean, come on.
yes.
Okay, so we just went through the fire, and I gave props to Joe and Katerina, who, while nervous about making some cuts, worked with us and were willing to make some cuts where they thought they could. So there's cuts here in, as you see, overtime, heating, oil, gas, dues, subscriptions, vehicle repairs, fuel oil, and equipment purchases for a total decrease of 41,220 and a new budget of 1,256,541. And this has already been approved by fire admin.
Moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so that will pass. Paul, you and I? Yep. Next is joint loss. This is one of those like, just little baby ones. Joint loss has a budget of $240. The recommendation is to drop that to $1, as historically they never spend anything. So that would be a decrease of $239. I think if we leave wages, actually if we leave wages at 1 and general supplies at 1, that would actually be a $2 budget.
Motion.
Motion for $2. Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Nice, done. Okay. Code enforcement, we're gonna leave. Emergency management, we're going to go to next. That has a few small cuts. The idea is that this is a potential place we could use our 20,000 buffer for emergency management if we were short in this department. General supplies, we recommended going down to $1, as historically that's not spent. Telephone communications, we weren't sure why that was budgeted so high, and dropped that down to $500 because we only spent just under $400 this year. Those changes in total would be $1,749 reduction for a new budget of $4,627.
Moved.
What about the salaries, or did the salaries go up? 'Cause we only spent 2,400.
That,
I think that has to do with how long the Seabrook drills take.
oh, that could
And it
be.
depends on the drill cycle.
So it's variable.
I think we're coming into a drill cycle.
So leaving that be makes sense. Okay, great. So the 4,627, did we have a motion?
Yes, I moved
Yep.
it.
Is there a second?
Sure.
Other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Okay. Next, we have mosquito control. That is one that Letty did not have on her list, but I actually pulled the contract up. And rather than being $30,200, it's actually $29,200. So we can trim $1,000 on here and still be in the contract.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. So we'll approve that at 29.2. And that actually, just so you guys know, that's a buffer. So our contract with them is $28,000. But if we need to do emergency spraying at the rec because of anything outbreaks, that's an additional $1,200. So I just left that in there. Highway is next. I briefly went over these with Wayne today, and any cuts make him nervous, but he did acknowledge that some of these budgets were inflated in COVID and when we had like the 15% inflation. And so he felt comfortable making the bulk of these cuts. So when you look at the first part of his budget, there are cuts in electric down to $4,000, heating, oil, and gas down to $7,500. So that's cutting that in half. Vehicle, fuel, and oil down $5,000 from $30,000 to $25,000. Hand tools down to $1,000. Signs down from $2,500 to $2,000. And care of trees down from $6,500 to $4,000. So there's some buffers left in some of those lines. If we accepted all for 6 of those changes, that would be a decrease of $23,500. And this would actually put his whole budget as a decrease of 0.7% from last year at $812,637.
Moved.
What about the road construction?
That is, usually every year we would approve $350,000 to pave approximately 2 miles of road. And there was already $30,000 in that line for like regular road repairs. So that's at that 380. I don't 100% know why that was underspent.
I'm looking right
This
now to see
year?
if anything else.
Yeah, because usually that line generally gets spent because he pays as much as he can until he runs out of money in that line. There's extra money there. So I would suggest not changing that line. Although we could certainly look at that in the future.
I think we can leave it because we've cut a lot of the other lines
I-
pretty aggressively.
Yeah, especially with the trees line, I feel like the trees can be.
Yeah, that can be variable. Yeah, so we left that at 4,000. Anybody have major concerns about these other suggestions?
It's only $10,000 more than what this actual says.
All right, so we're good with 812,637, that's the number?
Yep.
Moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. So we'll go. Next is snow and ice control. So this is the one we had previously cut and we're just talking about earlier with encumbrance. And so we're talking about doing an additional cut of this sand, salt, cold patch line from 90,626 down to 45,000, which would be a decrease of 45,626, and would drop that subset of the budget to 96,784.
Why are we being so aggressive with that one?
Because we're
Never
gonna
spends.
encumber the rest of his salt bill, which would theoretically pay for all of the salt bills through next summer, and would leave him 45 for just the tail end of the year, because that budget is generally quite inflated if we have a relatively mild winter. And so we have sort of a double buffer on that one, because we're going to encumber some funds for him, because we have an
The
invoice.
only other problem is he'll have to start buying sand.
Yep. I think that's why we left it. I mean, we
But
could adjust
Between salt and sand, I don't think 45,000 will be enough.
Why
for
do
the
you
second
think
part
that?
of the year.
But why do you think that? On average, that over the last 5 years, that line has been about $50,000 total, which is salt.
I can see what we're at right now. Yeah, that line, I can't really recall how that line got so inflated over time. This
Because
year,
he orders as
we,
much salt as he would need. for
this
the
year, we
works.
spent 64,162 in total.
Because
over the calendar year.
Because remember how he has to
Yeah, he orders it in
ask the
advance.
salt pile for
Yep.
as much as he might want?
Yep. So we can certainly adjust that if you feel comfortable, but given that we spent 64 this year, we're gonna encumber, he needs to get me the exact number, but the encumbrance is pretty high, because it's the
We spent-
rest. 64,162 as of the most recent, or actually, no, this is not the most recent.
I can find out.
Can
I have-
you,
I have
do you have
a-
the most recent one? This is the one I pulled for that other, oh, it's right here. $64,162, it hasn't changed.
Yep.
So if we have 45, that's a delta of 15,000, and we're planning to encumber more than that. So we should be fine, but if anybody wants to change it, I would be willing to discuss that. Thoughts? Paul's on it. Is there a second?
So that's 9, 6, 7, 8.
96,784.
Do we know what the encumbrance is?
I remember
Is
when
it
we
like
first.
50,000?
Yeah, I think it's north of that, because it's the entire bill minus what he's already paid for. I feel like it was,
I think it's.
I think the total
it's
bill was like
$100,000.
117,000, and he had spent some of it, so we don't even have to, it's a big number. I just can't tell you right now exactly what it is.
I'll second it.
And if we make a catastrophic error here, we have until the budget hearing to correct it, if he comes to us and says, I was wrong about that number.
Yeah, it just makes me.
Paul's throwing money on the table over there. He's like,
To remind me what I owe you.
ah, okay. So, did somebody make the motion?
Paul did.
Oh, Paul made the motion, right. Did we get a second? Oh, you're on top of it. Okay. Any further discussion? I like the bemused look on Paul's face during all of these discussions. So we have a motion and a second on the table for 96,784. Any further discussion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstaining.
Abstain? Okay.
Recycling one's not correct because it doesn't have the,
Right, because this is an older version, so ignore that anyways, because we're not doing it. Keep flipping. The next change, Letty, you had suggested cutting the direct assistance line of welfare from 4,500 to 3,000. That is when funds that we use to support community members in emergency need, and we spent 2635 this year. That makes me a little nervous about cutting that, but at the same time, we have buffers as we've discussed.
so historically, my understanding is that the welfare director tries to connect people with
Services, right?
services that are
Yep.
not us.
Right,
So that line is usually underspent.
right.
We can obviously put it back if you.
Yeah. So it had been budgeted at 4,500. The suggestion was to drop it to 3,000, which would be a decrease of 15,000. We had previously dropped the community assistance line to 13,000. So I did correct that one on here. So it would, if we accept this change, it would drop that total budget to 18,907. Comments or discussion about that?
Moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Why are you opposed?
It's welfare. You don't know when you're gonna need to put someone up in a
Yeah.
hotel. You don't know when
Yep.
someone.
So we can spend more money than is on that. line.
Yeah,
I'm-
it's okay.
I'm really uncomfortable
It's
with that
okay. It passed.
perspective.
Yep.
Wait, you're uncomfortable with overspending lines? No, I just need, I need to understand. If he's uncomfortable overspending lines, then this whole thing isn't gonna work because we are counting on being able to overspend. the
It's
lines
going to
that
work.
we-
I think he's uncomfortable with cutting direct assistance to people
I
in
see.
need.
Okay.
Right? So we passed, we're good. We're moving on. The next one is all the way back on debt service. And actually, this is our last one, believe it or not, on page 18. So historically, as you guys know, we have impact fees for all different areas of town. We talked to Joe Bird about this, and he said that traditionally, he never uses his impact fees for anything because generally they are always used to pay down the principal of the fire station bond. We looked into that account and there was, I want to say 60,000+ in that account, 63 ballpark. I don't remember when we we're looking at it. This board had previously decided to cut that fire station principal from 75,000 down to 50. So I'd like to discuss with the board either dropping it to 40 or if the board's feeling rambunctious, maybe a little bit more than that. I don't want to use all of those impact fees because we want to be able to mitigate it over next year and the year after. But if we were comfortable dropping that to 40, that would be us paying off 35,000 or using about half of those impact fees to get us a budget reduction of $10,000. What are the board's thoughts on that?
Do you want to talk about why we felt comfortable? I felt comfortable doing more this year because there's a lot of new building going in, so I think that fund is going to be healthily replenished.
There will be some replenishment of impact fees in the next year, yeah, with new buildings. And that if we take the additional monies out, that still leaves us with somewhere north of 30,000 in that account. So we'd still have money there to pay down this bond again next year in the sort of traditional way that we've done, which has been 25,000 a year. This just increases it a bit. Thoughts on that?
Clear, you're decreasing from the impact fee, still enough.
Oh, yeah, we're paying the bonds no matter what. It's
I
just,
Increasing
Yeah.
use of the impact fees.
right, traditionally we use 25, this would be having us use 35 to get a budgetary savings of $10,000 by using impact fees. And I had actually thought of like, should we do a little more? But I think this is a happy medium because it would take 35, it would leave about 30 in there. It'll grow some, so it might give us the ability to pay it down by either our standard 25 next year or more. I just didn't want to use, we could use all of it, but then next year we have to bump it back up. So to try to level out the budget up and downs, Letty and I discussed this and thought this was kind of a safe number.
I'll move the 215,100.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, all right. Letty, do you have a bottom line number for us?
Bottom line number for the total budget,
Yes.
6826043.
682
6043,
6043.
which
Was-
is a difference from last year of 527281. Numbers are right.
Was that with the trash numbers? Because we skipped over trash because we didn't have.
These are
one.
with the trash.
Yeah, she's working, this is just an older version here.
And it brings us down to 8.37.
Ooh,
Assuming I haven't forgotten something.
yes, we will double check all of our numbers, because this is a lot of math. So the additional decreases is because we made some small additional cuts and we changed the town administrator, which was and fire. Police gave us a little bit more than we were
Police, I think
anticipating.
police was a big
That all
part
helped
of it,
us.
Yeah.
Great, wonderful. So I would still anticipate that we could adjust this, like I said, if we find out some other information that we need to adjust something back up or down. But I know I personally would feel a lot more comfortable going to the voters with a budget we've trimmed from 13-ish% down to 8, low 8s. And I do think that I want to ask all my fellow board members to make sure we're super, super clear with any townspeople that ask us that this is a different process from what we've usually done. Usually it's been like, oh, your budget's level funded, that's great. But we knew that we needed to be more aggressive this year and to just make sure we really communicate that to the public, that the number that we are bringing them has already been pretty significantly cut. And hope that the public really understands that and can get on board with us, that the bulk of the increases in this $500,000 budgetary increase is fire, trash, recycling, benefits, and liability, police, as it often is. And so hopefully we could communicate that in a clear way to the public, that how much work and effort went into trying to get these numbers down. And I want to thank Letty very, very much for her spreadsheet skills, because that was very, very helpful, and thank the board members who are willing to make some cuts here. Any further comments on that process? We got through all 18 pages. Ooh, not too many. It didn't come to blows, so that was good. Okay. Next. This was my mistake forgetting to bring this up at the meeting in December, but so be it. This board had previously advised KIP to move ahead with an updated rec windows quote, and we did get that. And I have it right here. Maybe. So this is a quote from Coastal Industries out of Haverhill, Mass, for the windows at the rec, and it's a total of 17 windows of various different types, including ones that open, don't open, etc. The total quote is for $46,165.12. They're asking if this is approved for a 33% deposit, which would be $15,234. And that would come out of the building maintenance capital reserve fund.
Moved.
So
What's in there? What's in that fund?
Like 170, 150, 170.
Yeah. Enough.
So, this is repairs, maintenance, right?
Yeah.
This would be capital reserve fund rather than any budgetary line. Because it's a major project. Those lines are for like small, like I had to fix a
Generator.
leaky something. Yeah, like little.
Oh, yeah, the water heater.
I mean, you could squabble between them, right? They're both maintenance lines.
Okay.
Yeah. Further comments, questions about this quote? Is everyone in agreement? If so, I will take a motion to accept the $46,165.12.
Moved.
Go a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. Okay, so that will pass, and we will go about getting them that deposit. On it. Okay, thank you. Moving on to regular business, just to jog my memory, I put some stuff down here to make sure I didn't forget it. We need to sign a couple forms for Jim Michaud. The first is a 2024 municipal assessment data certificate that he needs to submit to DRA, which I think is essentially just us acknowledging that we are doing equalization of our properties. And it was actually due in December, so I will take a motion to have the select board sign this for Jim.
Moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, and I'll sign this. The second is his standard year-to-year contract. I'm not sure I necessarily remember this coming to the board before. It may be that our town administrator just signed this with authorization, but this is his standard year-to-year consulting. This is not for the reval. It is just the standard regular daily, weekly, monthly services that he does for us. And it is a monthly rate of $22,050, which matches to the budgetary line that we have already approved.
Moved.
Second.
Any further questions or comments?
You said it was a monthly rate of what?
Monthly rate of 2250, which equals out to the budget line item. I checked it.
What you said, 22,000.
That's
Oh.
what I heard too.
No,
You did.
Yeah.
oh, that would be good. I'd want that job.
Yeah.
Okay. So we had a motion and a second, I believe. All in favor?
I,
I,
And if you can just get those back to me, I need to scan those
there's
to
a
him.
pile over here.
Perfect. Wonderful. I'll just jump to this really quickly. Did all the select board members see this email, an invitation to a meeting next week? If not, I will pass it around. This is not a public meeting. This is a meeting for select boards, town administrators, et cetera, to discuss the next steps for ALS. So I'll just pass this around. It does have the date, time, and location of the meeting. So if any of you guys can be there, Joe Bird would appreciate some of us going. It's going to be like a formal presentation of what the next steps of ALS may look like for town officials only. So just to make sure I pass that along. And then last, we have some abatements. The first set of abatements is for Langdon Construction. This was an administrative error that occurred, that properties that should have been in current use had been listed as coming out of current use. And so their taxable valuation was incorrect. And Daphne has gone through and worked with Jim to correct these. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 8. And they are all for Stone Creek Drive properties. And they all just have the adjustment. So for example, the first one adjusts the valuation from $170,800 down to the new taxable valuation of $1,081. So these are significant abatements because these were being taxed not in current use. The first abatement is for $1,982. The second one's for $2,158. The next one's $2,053. The next one's $2,005. The next one's $2,004. The next one is $1,968. And next one is $1,993. And the last one is $2,000. So I think we can probably approve those all in bulk because they are all for the same taxpayer.
all recommended by Jim.
Correct.
Moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
I,
And I'm an aye. And Daphne needs to get these back. Okay. The next one. Are these the same? Is this the same one?
I think there was a list of all of the.
Yeah, the Stone Creek.
There was
I think
one that
these-
wasn't part of this development.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
That had a different issue.
This is a Town of Brentwood. Oh, I know what this was. This was a plot of land that had been acquired by the town, but through some sort of error, the deed was not reflected correctly, and so we tried to tax ourselves, I think is what this one was.
How'd that go?
We didn't pay, in fact. So this would be abating that tax bill of $6,240 of us inadvertently trying to tax a town-owned property at 339 Route 125. Any further discussion or questions about that?
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm an aye. That's for non-public. Oh, yes, and there's an intent to cut. Last thing is an intent to cut for Map 217, lots 48 and 52, access by Mill Road. And this has gone through the standard process, right? Okay. And it looks like it's a 7.5 acre cut. It's a 73 acre lot. It says acreage of cut is 7.5 acres. That is anticipated to start on the 10th. Map 217, lot 48 and 52. Yep. River Run. Questions or comments? I'll take a motion.
Moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm an aye. There you go. Thank you for reminding me of that. So we have just done a great job cutting the budget. So while Wayne came to visit me today about consenting to cut his budget, he also let me know that our front end loader is dead. It is 22 years old, and they have tried and tried and tried to fix it. They've spent a couple $1,000s already trying to fix it. They maybe thought they had it fixed, but it is not fixed. And the parts that they would need to fix it no longer are made 22 years later. This is a front end loader that he says they use essentially every single day for almost all of their projects in town. And he had a conversation with a local John Deere broker that the ballpark price to replace this piece of equipment is in the range of $170,000. He does not have that money in his highway vehicle fund because he just bought a truck out of that fund, and that fund must be zero, if not close to zero. So he just wanted me to bring this before the board as what direction the board would like to go. He did mention that this particular seller with some other towns has done 3-year, 5-year, 7-year payment plans, so as to spread the cost out over time. And so I told him that I would just bring it before the board for a general directional discussion of how we want to handle this, or if we want to go out to bid, or what the board would like to do about replacing this important piece of highway equipment that was I think the hope was that it would last longer, and it's now done with its life.
What is the normal lifespan of that sort of thing?
I would suspect less than 22 years,
Well, I'm
but
just
I'm not a
wondering-
highway person.
I'm wondering if the replacement is on the capital reserve.
I don't think it is. Do you remember, Paul, on your recent perusing, because I know you were on that group last time, right? Were you on the capital reserve plan? Yeah, I don't recall it being on there, honestly, but I could be wrong. I don't have it right in front of me. So, unexpected, unwelcome news. So I'd love to hear from the board how you guys would like to handle this. Theoretically, we could purchase this out of unspent funds from his budget. I don't love that idea. It's a big purchase that's unbudgeted for. But clearly we need to replace this, as they literally use this like every single day.
Does he still have 60 some odd $1,000 in his paving budget?
Yep,
That number is up to date?
it's 50 something.
He has, in his highway budget, he has $117,000 remaining. In his snow and ice budget, he has $140,000 remaining for a total of $257,000. But remember, that is the amount that we plan to encumber, at least 50+ thousand for salt. But even if we did that, he does have room in his budget to purchase this vehicle. The discussion is just whether the board feels comfortable doing something like that, or looking for alternative strategies, or going to the voters to put money in the highway purchase fund.
So they do the 7-year payment plans, usually at 0% interest.
I think that's, sorry, I didn't specify interest rates, but I think it was willing to do a payment
That's
plan for us.
how those can work.
Yep.
I think that doing a down payment out of his budget for this past year, encumbering it, would be fine. And then trying to minimize the tax impact
Mhm.
through a 0% 7-year loan, I think would be probably the best thing for the taxpayers.
I think that's the directionality Wayne was looking for, is do we want him to go back and actually get terms on different payment plans? Paul's shaking his
Yeah,
head.
yeah.
Andy, Letty, thoughts?
I mean, so my only thought is that the last time he came and asked us for a big piece of equipment, we said that that was gonna be the last time we were, it's 8 o'clock. That was gonna be the last time we do that without going through the formal process that we use for every single other thing. However, we need this piece of equipment.
I'm
I hear you.
I'm
Yep.
with you on that.
I think we probably should look at some different options
Sure.
because we have a tractor dealer in town. So we probably should at least get a comparison quote from
Chapel.
Chapel.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Wayne would be happy to do that.
But yeah,
So-
we got to do something.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's totally finished yet, but when he came and talked to me this weekend, there was a company in town that has done some metal fabrication, and he was going to try to get them to fabricate the part that he needs. So I don't know what the
I thought it was a hose.
outcome is yet.
Although that-
It's a valve cover to the hydraulics.
And all he told me, I'm obviously not a automotive expert or highway expert. What he told me today is that they had done a welding job on part of it, and that does not appear that that's going to work. But I don't know if that's the same thing he was talking to you about. So his feeling was that they needed a new vehicle, but I don't know if there's any last ditch efforts they have.
I
That
mean, if
being
it's-
said, this
if
is a
it's used-
22-year-old vehicle.
If it gets used every day, then like, what's the alternative? We
Oh,
rent
the other
one?
thing that I did not say, sorry, I forgot this, is that I don't know, I think it's this particular John Deere, but potentially others, were willing to give us a rebate of $20,000 to take the existing loader for salvage. So that would lower our total price from the 170-ish down to the 150-ish range and give us a small cost savings. Basically salvaging, I think, the metal of the vehicle. So sorry, I forgot to mention that. So I should turn back to him that the board's generally in favor of getting another quote from local dealer
Does it have
and
to be a
looking
John
for
Deere?
payment plan. I don't know, I
Because
don't,
there are multiple tractor loader, right? There's the one like.
no idea,
Chapel doesn't do deers.
no idea. I
No,
just
know,
know
that's
this is
I'm
what
saying.
he,
That's, does it have to?
No.
I suspect maybe the one we have now said John Deere, but I don't know for sure. We could certainly ask him to get us some options. I think, I don't know, he gave me his whole, Wayne loves his folders. He gave me his whole folder, and it does have some other, I suspect maybe it's just different types of. Let's see. Oh yeah, like 444 tier. There's different quotes here. 179, 199. I think it's probably different size loaders, but the one he actually put in front of me was the lowest of the three that had been quoted to him, but it's all by the same dealer. So I think he felt we could get by with the least expensive, but these are all from the John Deere in Pembroke. Okay, so board generally in favor of me following up with him on that?
Plus, there's a John Deere dealer in Kensington,
Okay.
which is a little closer than
Yep.
Brook.
Okay.
Huh.
And obviously, what I'm hearing from the board is if we can do a 3, 5, 7-year payment plan at no interest, we would be in favor of that. Okay,
Or even potentially low interest, but
sure,
we'd need to hear what the rate
Yep.
would be.
totally. Okay. Yeah, a little bit of unwelcome news during this time of year, but when it's 22 years old, it happens. All right, I think, did you have any other stuff? Did I forget anything? Okay, good. So now we will move on to committee updates and any other board business, and we'll start with Andy.
Library trustees tomorrow. I submitted the Casella contract to Mitchell, and I haven't heard anything back yet.
Okay.
I wasn't sure who to send it to, so I sent it to Naomi.
Okay.
But that's about it.
Okay.
We're going to move the Economic Development Committee meeting that's scheduled for this month to March, we're gonna probably start doing quarterly meetings, based on my discussion I had with Bob Rossman earlier today. So Jillian, if you could help me, take that meeting off the calendar. Great, and then, I think that's,
Are you guys planning on doing more of like the business breakfast type of things that you've done, or did that kind of
we haven't
kind of
been
completed
getting-
that cycle?
We've been calling, emailing, and sending postcards, and there's just not engagement.
Okay.
So,
Any other board business you have? No, Paul?
I can't remember where we left off from, because it's been a few weeks.
I know,
But,
right?
Yeah, if I didn't say it last time, we did close on the Fuller easement.
Awesome.
So-
And there was a nice Seacoast Online
It
article
was very
about
nice.
it.
Yes,
Yep.
there was. So I should have brought a copy of it. Maybe I'll have it sitting on my desk in my office. I'll bring a copy for next time. Conservation tomorrow night at 6:30.
And remind me, there was a little bit of excess funds.
There was. So
That's
we
sort of
need to
still
make
a hanging out issue.
Right.
Okay.
We have until February to decide what to do with
Okay.
that. There was
Okay.
approximately $9,000. We can either retain that according to Ambrose, or, we could pay that money back to pay
Okay.
the loan, the bond.
Okay. Maybe we'll talk about that with our new town administrator.
Yeah,
I'm really enjoying saying that statement. It's like the 10th time today I've said that.
well, yeah, but I mean, ultimately, it's our decision
Of course.
to make what we
Yeah.
want to do with it. So.
Yep. Okay. Letty?
I don't think I've had any actual meetings. That ad hoc committee that I formed is awesome. I'm calling them
The communication committee?
Yep. Assuming that the budget that we have approved goes into the budget committee next week and gets approved, a couple of people from that committee are gonna come to show the resulting product to the select board next Tuesday. I know at one point we talked about putting things on the website and whether or not we should mail things to people, just basically trying to get people more involved.
Yep. The idea to produce a citizen-led document with our data in it to help encourage engagement, understanding, transparency about the budgetary numbers and
Yep.
process.
I think the thing that somebody said last night that was really helpful is that if nobody comes to the budget hearing, we've done pretty much all we can other than
Sure.
physically knock on every door.
Yep.
And so we're gonna learn something either way.
Great.
But I think it's gonna be really hard for people to say that they're not having access to the information and they don't know when the meeting is.
Yep. Gotcha. Perfect. Okay. Updates for me, we are going to have a BudCom meeting next week to go over the changes that we made tonight. My assumption would be that BudCom is generally going to be in favor of us having cut the budget by $200,000. And so I will report back to the board after those discussions happen. We also had a municipal building meeting today, and that board is continuing with the plan of moving ahead with an engineering assessment so that by town meeting 2026, we would have multiple sets of information to give to the voters of a police station alone, a police station with a town office building, and a police station that could in the future be built out to include the town office building, so sort of three options. The thought is that that group would like to put forward a warrant article to put an additional $25,000 into the existing engineering and planning account to make sure they have the funds to pay for that full engineering assessment. So we, same thing as we talked about earlier, we'll have those wordsmithed with DRA or town council or whoever needs to help wordsmith that for us. And then that will come back to this board for formal approval. But as of now, that is the only warrant that will come from that committee, is just to continue the next step of planning and hopefully by 1 year from now have something to go in front of the voters to actually vote on a build option. So that group is moving forward, and that group is still looking for community members who are interested in participating. So if anybody is interested, please let us know, and we will be happy to have you participate. I think that was all that I had. Did anybody else have any general board business? Nope. I do have a brief legal non-public. Does anybody else have a topic for non-public? Nope, so it should be fairly brief. So I will take a motion to go back into non-public for the second time at 8:09.
Moved.
Second.
So Andy and John, roll call vote. Andy?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Paul? Letty?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.